Welcome back to our podcast, Let's Talk About Labor. This podcast aims to help farmers and ag businesses connect with other ag businesses specifically to hear and learn about their experiences and challenges related to labor and the strategies they have used to overcome these challenges. We talk about various topics such as U.S. temporary foreign visa programs, mechanization and automation, and worker recruitment and retention strategies, among other topics. Different agencies and organizations have partnered with us to make this podcast possible, including the Southern Risk Management Education Center, Gap Connections, the U.S. Department of Agriculture SCRI program, and the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. This podcast would not be possible without the participation of farmers and ag businesses. My name is Margarita Velandia, and I'm a professor in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics at the University of Tennessee. Annette?
My name is Annette Waslacki, and I'm a professor in the Department of Plant Sciences at the University of Tennessee and the Commercial Vegetable Extension Specialist.
Great. So we would like to introduce our guest for today's episode, Dana Ensor, owner of Grand Oak Farm in Jonesboro, Tennessee. She's also the president of Green Earth Connections, a consulting organization that works with agricultural and environmental organizations and agencies on issues related to the agricultural, environmental, and local food production issues. She provides consulting and training for organizations working with farmers to ensure economic and environmental sustainability on their farms through educational classes and on-farm consultations. Welcome, Dana, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
All right, we're going to jump right in with the questions. So Dana, could you tell us a little bit about your farm, including the number of years you've been in business and your market outlets that you used or you have used in the past to sell your products, and the number of employees you might have, and the type of employees you've had?
Sure. First, thank you for inviting me to speak today. It's great to be here with both of you. My farm, as you said, is called Grand Oak Farm. It's been in operation since 1778. So it was actually a Revolutionary War grant of 1,000 acres. I have the last 130 acres, and my grandson is the 10th generation on the farm. Over its history of over 200 years, it has been a homestead tobacco farm. It was a dairy when I was growing up here, beef cattle. And then when I inherited the farm in 2013, I started growing hay and organically grown vegetables and flowers. And currently, I am an incubator farm for young farmers that don't have land. I do want to mention that I worked for the NRCS my whole career of 34 years, but I worked mostly with big agriculture, corn, soybeans, wheat, and large dairies and large vegetable production. So going to a small scale was fairly new to me when I came back. When we were in full production, the markets we sold at were local farmers markets. We sold a lot to restaurants and also had a community support agriculture or CSA. During this time, I worked full time and we had interns. I had one full-time employee, and we had students from work study programs from the local high schools who also came and worked on the farm. When I married last year, I gained another free helper, but I'm almost 70 and he's 75. So we are slowly changing how we're doing the work on the farm. Don't have currently any hired employees. But we do have this incubator farm, but I can talk a lot about when we did have employees on the farm.
Excellent, Dana. That's a very good overview of the history of the farm and your history. And welcome to a new partner, free helper in your farm, I guess. Now, let's talk about the labor challenges you have faced over time. For example, challenges related to labor availability, worker recruitment, and retention. I know, as you mentioned, you have also mentor owners of other small scale farms. So, talk to us about the labor challenges you have faced and also the labor challenge you have seen these other growers facing.
Probably labor and capital are the two largest things that people talk about when they get into farming, or if they have been, even if they've been farming for many years. Finding individuals who want to work on a farm in agriculture today is a real challenge. Mainly because it's very hard, hot work in the summer and cold in the winter if you have animals or need to be doing things in the winter. And you may not need workers all year long, depending on the kind of industry you're in. So sometimes they don't return or they don't like what they've done and they say, I'm not coming back. You may need to retrain individuals each season, especially if they don't return, which takes time. If you have equipment, you're going to have to train them on that equipment. You're going to have plans to prevent them from getting hurt, and so they can operate equipment safely on the farm. And again, if there's a new person every year, you have to start from the beginning. You also have to deal with absenteeism. It seems more than it used to when they just don't show up, and maybe you had a lot to do on that day. And how are you going to do that? And what do you do if employees do something illegal on the farm, or they damage property or equipment? You have to have a plan for that. So hopefully you don't get to something like that. There's a financial cost to having an employee. It takes time to meet with them. And especially if you're doing an internship, which we'll talk about here because of the educational component of that. And then there's this whole accounting, workman's comp, insurance cost that are needed with that. And, many times, again, these people don't come for the whole year, or they only come one season and not more than others. So that to me also is a big problem. And if you're older like me, you start having health issues, and even young people have health issues. But just for example, I was using clippers for 3 or 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I had to have hand surgery after about 2 years because you just get worn out. So how are you going to keep from doing those kinds of things? And then if you are going to have interns or employees, are you going to provide housing or transportation? When we had high school students, we actually had to go pick them up and bring them to the farm. Do you have the housing that you need? And I had a yurt actually where we did a trade. It was the employee I had brought the yurt to the farm. And we, as far as not being paid completely, they got free electricity, free water. They had a bathroom, laundry, and the transportation they needed while working. So those are all things and challenges that you have when you're bringing people onto your farm.
So you talked about some of these, but maybe we can go into a little more detail on some of the strategies you've used to overcome those challenges.
Sure. Well, I wouldn't be a good beginning farmer teacher if I didn't say, have you decided that you need to have employees? Do you want to be a solo operator, or are you going to be a partnership and depend on family, which has its own complications with it? Are you going to have interns or apprentices or seasonal workers? Are you hiring these people, or are you going to have hired employees? Because each of these, the complexity goes up, the cost and time needed for supervision and training for those. Second, you really have to have a good business plan to see if you can afford to have an employee, or if there's another way to get the job done. Is there machinery or tools that can take the place of some of the labor? But remember, that's a capital cost that you got to pay back the purchase of the equipment, and that can take time. But you also, what's the capability of yourself and your employees? For example, when I started farming vegetables, that was not something on a small scale I had done. One of all the farmers around me said, "Oh, you need to get a walk behind tractor." Well, I was 60, and a good friend of mine who was 75 said, "Dana, you don't need a walk behind tractor. It's going to wear you out as old as you are. and you have a tractor. Why don't you just buy the equipment you needed? And in the end, that was a good strategy for us. Another example would be, we were selling at farmers markets. We were going to have to get up at 4 a.m. to harvest in the dark and prepare vegetables. And we decided to go through the TAPE, Tennessee Agricultural Enhancement Program, and get some funding to put in a cooler, which allowed us to spread our harvest over several days before the market. So this was using both what we physically could do as well as what mechanically we might do, to see, and then put that into our business plan to make sure it could be paid for by what we were going to earn. And so the next thing, you've got to find employees. And so I did everything from word of mouth, especially with other farmers, that had somebody that they just needed them part-time so that we could put them together on several farms. There are email discussion lists, farming list, Jonesboro locally grown list, Craigslist. You can go to formal agricultural sites, and many times they will have places to list for interns or for employees. You can go to farm meetings where you will find some individuals might, again, be able to connect you to people that they have. Wolfing USA is willing workers on organic farms. I have had farmers who have both participated in this and been part of it. Most of the times they're coming from foreign countries, some within the USA, but you many times have to supply housing for that. There are professional ag sites like ATRA that let you list internships, newspapers, although nobody reads a newspaper anymore, or posting in ag businesses or telling them and their employees you're looking for somebody, social media, state employment department job listings, and then job listings at local colleges and universities. If you don't have an agricultural university near you, like UT, they may not come with an ag background, or they may have come from a farm and would like to go back on a farm in the summertime. Remember, you're in an area also that at least in East Tennessee, we do not have a lot of minorities. And many times those minorities that used to be in farming no longer want to be associated with the farming, and their families don't want them to do that. So that is something to think about. And then how are you going to train and maintain these employees? Are you a good at training? Have you even ever supervised anybody before? Are you good at giving instruction, making the best of each other's abilities? Can you delegate and then walk away? But you've also told them exactly what your expectation is and what is a job, how long it takes to do a job. Can you teach them ways to improve what they're doing without being demanding? Can you give them credit when it's due? Are you empathetic with the rest of their lives, like their family issues and other jobs? And can you compensate them as well as possible? And then create incentives for your employees so they want to work with you. One of the things we did was we said we had an 8-hour workday on this farm, although we worked from 6 to 6 many times. But they had a pay sheet. We had paid time off. They could use that up to a certain amount of collection for the month, and then they had to use it. But what happened is, because we were in vegetables, they gained enough they could keep up to a month that they had to use before the end of the year. And many times we didn't work in December. And so they actually got paid in December, which made them more willing to be ready to start in January because they didn't have to go find something at Christmas to pay their needs. Another thing is, do you have the legal expertise and know what the legal things you need to do if you have interns or employees? There's an organization called Farm Commons that I highly recommend, that is an excellent resource. You do have to have a membership now to do that. But, do you know the labor laws around interns, mainly this educational component? And always think about that insurance you're going to need to have. Farm Bureau has this 100-man day insurance policy that I always got, even though I had a policy for some on my farm, that made me feel better about having those people on the farm. And, what are you going to do if somebody does get hurt? What's your safety plan? And employees, workman's comp insurance, And, some people don't even think about this. If they're going to drive your truck, you've got to add them to your insurance policy. So, and then I'm a big person. I highly recommend you have a farm employment manual that they read and they sign. And then if there are operation manuals for equipment, that they read those and sign those so that you at least know that they said they had looked at this information.
Dana, this is excellent information. And we're almost at the end of the episode. And so personally, for example, when I have had the best learning experiences have been from the mistakes that I have made. So again, people learn from their successes, but also they learn from their mistakes. So can you share with us an experience of success or failure that you have experienced while trying to address labor challenges in your operation that you think would be useful for other small-scale farmers to hear?
Sure. Well, most people go into farming because they like to be by themselves. So they're not always the best at handling employees. Luckily, I'd come from an environment where I'd had lots of employees and trained lots of employees. So if you're not a person that likes to be around people and you need to probably go take some classes on that. There's lots of good classes on supervision. The agricultural nonprofits around here, the University of Tennessee, all provide classes on employment and employees. Understand that family and friends are helpful up to a point, but burnout of them is real, and that you shouldn't. They should be there to help you in a pinch, unless you're in a partnership, and then they're in a partnership with you. But and good employees are golden, so you got to treat them that way. And paid time off or some retention strategy that helps them come back, I think, is especially important. Otherwise, you're going to start the process over and over every year. And think about, this business plan. I'm really big on putting down all your costs, including your employees, but knowing, what has made you the money that you could do, and how do you make your life easier. This legal or accounting assistance will save you many problems if you don't know how to file workman's comp or Social Security or insurance. You need to get the experts to help with that. And I can't overemphasize is looking at the strategies and the tools and equipment that you might need, and looking at your business plan to say, can you afford that or a person or both? And then think about what you're going to do if you're going to scale up. One of the things that we did that I would never recommend, and I say this in every business planning class, is we grew 90 different vegetables and flowers our first few years when my employee and I were working together. One, because we weren't quite sure, what was going to sell that was new and different in our area. And plus, my employee, who had been farming for a while, wanted to try out a bunch of things. Now, after 1 year, we greatly scaled down on that. But that's when we could take time then to have an intern on the farm, which had a training component to that. And then, in the bottom line, remember, everybody has a bad day, including yourself, and try to fit the jobs to the people that you have. My employee was great at sales, loved to be around people. I preferred, having been in government for 34 years, to work at the farm and let her go do the sales. So it worked out good for us because it fit our personalities of what we wanted to do on the farm. So if I could say, those are some of the things I thought about of how not to have a mistake or how to prevent mistakes, those would be them.
Well, Dana, we're at the end of this episode, and we want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with us. And I guess I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.